Can you hear that when it does that?
Yeah,
See
says
it?
recording progress.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool. So yeah, just identify however you want and time's yours.
Nice. Well, I'm Jordan. I'm an alcoholic. Um, Thanks for having me on. So I wrote, thinking about this stuff, I wrote kind of a theme for my experience as in uh, born and raised in Utah, youngest of four in a Mormon family. Um, you know, I think early in my sobriety, I really tried to pinpoint um, religion as a driving factor, and I don't think it really was, other than the usual thing of being told that something is taboo all growing up. I was pretty eager to explore it, so that might have got me to the point of trying stuff, but I don't think that was I think I have the disease of alcoholism, and I was going to find it one way or another. So yeah, no real early childhood memories of any big indicators. A lot of people that I've experienced in the rooms have talked about, yeah, I can track back to this one thing, this trauma that happened to me. Had a shit childhood, parents were alcoholics. I'm one of those guys that's not the case. I was born in a loving family, and never wanted for anything, and my parents were sober and kind and loving. I was told I was loved every day, so I don't have that excuse. Kind of having gone through the steps, it opened up some questions in my mind and stuff. But looking back, no real early childhood. Oh, I already said that. What I came across was I was introduced to pornography super young. Um, I'm not going to get into porn. I don't have any hard stance either way, but that was shortly followed by an introduction to stealing. Basically kind of the bad influences. And I hated to admit that as an adult, that my parents were right, because they were always like, oh, that kid's a bad influence. And I was like, oh, whatever, no one can influence me. But I think I just had those influences. So got into porn young, started stealing, was introduced to weed, and then alcohol. And we'll get into that. And then, you know, I've I have very few childhood memories, and I feel like that's pretty common against people, or with people with our disease. But um, I do have some light sexual abuse in my background. It was nothing crazy. It wasn't rape, anything like that. I've gone to therapy over it, and basically it's one small step beyond just normal kid experimentation stuff, but that touched off into some sexual stuff that might come up later. But yeah, my first real drink was blackout drunk. I was in junior high, and me and my best friend gained access to alcohol, and we drank it till it was gone and blacked out. No memories of half the night. You know and then after that, it was basically get altered at every chance with as much substance as possible, with whatever I could get my hands on. I never, I don't have any recollection of ever drinking or using drugs normally. It was just, if I could get my hands on something, I wanted to get as altered as I could. Um, at some point, I got introduced to Oxycontin, Valium, other pills came into play. That was kind of in the my second arrest was at 17 for possession with intent to distribute. Um, Arrest was for felony theft and burglary. I stole a dirt bike out of a garage, and they threw the book at me. And so what that ended up being precipitating was half of my high school career I was on house arrest. So I was allowed to go to school, and then I had to come home. And I didn't write this down, but that brings up, I remember trying to drink mouthwash to get drunk on house arrest, and then I almost died using a computer duster. I was huffing duster, just anything to get altered. And I woke up, luckily on my side, and had vomited everywhere, and could have easily have aspirated. Was home alone during the day. And so, yeah, during high school, I just anytime I could get away when I wasn't on house arrest, I was not home, and I was out with, people that wanted to do the stuff that I wanted to do, which was get altered. um, but managed to graduate high school on time, started college. I started skydiving when I was 18. My dad was a skydiver in the 80s, so started skydiving, and that basically took over my world. So I was going to college up at Utah State, and working during the week, and then on the weekends I was just spending it at the drop zone skydiving. And basically, it doesn't have to be, but almost exclusively skydiving, in my experience, equals partying. You jump during the day and you party at night. I was young, 18, 19, hanging out with really cool people that all in their, late 20s, early 30s, and they were just my idols, and they all liked to party. And so, I fit right in, and there was no eyebrows raised about the way I was drinking or using. So I'm a pilot as a profession, so that's what I went to school for. I don't know how I managed to get through college, but got through college. I got through all my flight ratings, private instrument, commercial flight instructor. My dad paid for all my schooling. I was extremely blessed for that. And I totally took advantage of it. And like a lot of alcoholics, I'm fairly smart, and I'm very manipulative, so I was able to just kind of squeak through and get all those, get these certificates for flying, while also, drinking alcoholically at every opportunity I could. But really, other than the high school arrests and stuff, no big consequences yet. I was able to kind of keep things somewhat tight. But I feel like, a lot of wasted youth, looking back, it's like we talked about getting wasted, and it's, I look back and I did have a lot of fun, but it's like, man, I wasted beautiful young, early 20s relationships, because I just didn't, I didn't care for anything other than, having fun and getting stoned, so got all my pilot's ratings, ended up getting a job down in Arizona at one of the biggest skydiving centers in the world, which was like my dream. I started jumping down there in the winters when I was like 19, and it's like home to world champion skydiving teams and like, hero names in the sport that I knew. And all of a sudden I was hanging out at the bar with these guys and girls, and, and pilots are pretty revered in that community. And so once I moved down there, it was pretty much game on. I pretty much had instant access to, I lived 50 feet from a bar. I had access to Coke. I mostly stayed away from weed because it stays in your system so long. But so that was when I really started to have to try and balance my job and the lifestyle that I wanted to live. Because as a pilot, rightly so, it's not a good idea to drink alcoholically and use drugs. You have people's lives in your hands every day. And so that was when I really started to try and balance things, and when I really started to kind of actually be out of control, to where I was, doing things when I didn't necessarily want to be, and stuff like that. So, it got to the point where I never used drugs or drank and got in the airplane under the influence. But it was like I was carrying fake piss with me in case I got drug tested, stuff like that. And then the day that I didn't carry it is when I actually got drug tested. So in 2011, I actually failed a drug test, and that was like game over. It was, you're fired. It was the FAA pulling my pilot's license. It was moving back in with my parents. It was, I seriously contemplated suicide. My whole life, everything I had worked for years was done, and that was when I wanted to mention, I had a boss that was a sober alcoholic, my chief pilot, and she actually came to me shortly before I got in trouble, and she said, "Hey, I've been noticing these behaviors in you. I've been hearing things. Like, if you're honest with me, we can take care of this. We can get you help, blah, blah, blah." And I wrote her off and was like, "No, I'm fine. That's all bull." And so that stuck in my head. And so the day I got fired, I talked to her, and she took me to my first AA meeting. And that was the first of many before I actually admitted that I was an alcoholic. But so that didn't stick. So moved home, but moved out. I moved into my parents, but then moved out pretty quick because I realized I couldn't, drink and use there. So moved out, moved in with friends, and just continued the deal. The FAA offered to put me into what's called the HIMSS program. It's normally reserved for like airline pilots, and it's basically a recovery program for pilots. And normally, like an airline will pay for you to go through it as long as you don't get caught and you just admit you have a problem. They'll pay for you to go through it. I had to pay for myself to go through it, so I spent about $40,000 over 3 years to put myself through this recovery program that I really didn't take advantage of. So I had to get psychiatric and psychological evaluations that I never fully told the truth in. I was put under great doctors that were overseeing my recovery program that I never was fully honest with. But I did pretty much get sober for those 3 years. It was a total dry drunk though. I was miserable. I still was, I had all the bedevilments that are listed out in the big book. I could not find any joy in life without substance, and actually had one doctor. So I got flying again after a year. Couldn't find any jobs in the US. Had a friend over in Dubai working at a skydiving center that hooked me up with a job. So I moved over to Dubai. Found a doctor over there that was willing to take me on the HIMSS program. Started flying for them, and she got me on a drug and alcohol testing schedule that I pretty quickly figured out was this month was drug test, this month was alcohol test. So what did I do? I thought I'd game the system, and so for a few weeks, every couple months, I would sneak some drinks, and then I went in and went to get my drug test, and she said it was going to be alcohol, and I knew I was going to be dirty for alcohol. And that could have been it. With the HIMSS program, it's like, it's not three strikes. It's you get your one chance. If you screw it up, you're done. You're never flying again. And I got down on my knees crying and begged this doctor not to turn me in. And she had every right to, she had no reason to help me out. And it probably would have saved me some years of suffering if she had, excuse me, turned me in. But she didn't, and she let me go, and I made promises, and da 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 da, and so continued another couple years of being a dry drunk. Yeah, I went to Dubai. Once I left Dubai, I moved to Alaska, got a job flying float planes. That was another dream of mine, was to fly bush planes in Alaska. So got a job there, and pretty shortly into that job stint, I came off of the HIMSS program, and they gave me free reign, because none of my reports from those guys said I was an alcoholic, because I was never honest with them. And so it was like, okay, high five, here you go. Here's everything free and clear. And that was in Kodiak, Alaska, which is a pretty rough and tumble town, and no one looks twice if you stink like whiskey. And I just went hell bent for drinking. It got to the point where at my worst there, I was drinking a fifth of vodka a day. And that was, I had a few hours at night to get loaded because I had to be ready to fly the next day. And yeah, fifth a day of vodka, and just not taking any advantage of the wonderful opportunities that living in a place and having that job provide. I was putting people's lives at risk. I was putting my life at risk. My career was hanging in the balance. I still to this day, if I get one, DUI, public intox, anything having to do with substance, I'm done. I never fly again. So, just no matter the consequences, right? Death, loss of career, loss of respect to my family that I worked to get back, anything, it doesn't matter when it comes to alcohol with me. If I put it in me, that all goes out the window, and I'm gonna eventually get caught. After 3 years in Kodiak, I moved to a job flying glacier tours in Denali, up on used to be Mount McKinley, but in Denali, Alaska. So flying aircraft with skis on them, taking people up onto the glaciers. Another real, really rewarding job, but also high risk. and still just daily excessive drinking, as much as I could get in me until I'd pass out. And I couldn't sleep without it. I got to the point I just kept a pint glass full of vodka next to the bed and would just drink on that until I went to sleep. Rinse and repeat type of deal. Had a great relationship in that town, ruined that with alcohol. Really started getting to the end of my nerves, working a really pretty dangerous job while drinking alcoholically. And in the summer, actually July 18th, so 6 years ago yesterday, a good friend of mine was killed flying in Alaska. And he was like the cat's meow of a human. I won't go way into it, but just the most beautiful person ever. And here I am, a piece of shit drunk, and he dies and I lived. And that just sent me over the edge, man. I was contemplating just walking away from flying. I was contemplating suicide. I just was like, couldn't wrap my brain around, why life is the way it is. And it got really dark. And luckily at that time is when I got the job offer for the job that I have now. So I was able to get out from there, moved back to the States, was starting that job soon. And at the time, my sister, who's also an alcoholic, she was on ant abuse and drinking in an abusive marriage. And at that point, I'd gone to a few meetings here and there, and I'd heard about 90 and 90. And so I told my sister she needed a 90 and 90, and that I would take her. And so, I had no intention of stopping. I still at that point, really didn't think I couldn't handle it myself. Always the day was going to come. I was going to figure it out and drink normally. But so I started taking her to a 90 and 90. And that's, when I started hearing things that made sense. I started hearing my story in the rooms. I know that's cliche, but I did. I was hearing people that had my experience or similar, and that were happy and living, had somewhat of a grip on this thing. And so, I had that bug in my ear, and then I started this job that I have now. I work in wildland fire, and it's very serious. It's risky. I'm carrying, 8 guys that I'm close friends with in the back of my plane. Their lives are in my hands. I know their wives. I know their kids. And so I was like, I can temper this, and shortly before my first fire season was my last drunk. The book, the book talks about, if you're wondering if you have this thing, try and do some controlled drinking. And so I had been on like a 30-day sober type deal, and decided that I would try the controlled drinking thing. And that was my last drunk. There was no control. I was on an airliner back from Alaska, and was going to have 2 cocktails, and have no memory of anything past Anchorage, and came to on my friend's couch in Salt Lake, and didn't know how I got there. And it was like, okay, that's it. So that was 3 days before moving up to where I live now, and I got to a meeting first thing up here. I've never been drunk in this town. I've been living here almost 6 years. I was doing the back and forth for a while, but I moved up here full time last year. And yeah, basically got into the rooms, and they're like big book thumpers up here. They're big into the big book. It is AA. It is not therapy. It's not advice. It's like, here's the book. I'll be your sponsor, and that means that I'm going to show you how to work the steps, period. My sponsor never offered to help me with relationship issues, with money issues, with job issues. It was any problem I came to him with, he pointed me into the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, and got me in the steps. And I've just been super lucky in that. You see people come in and out all the time. I've seen people that were way further down the scale than I have, that have come in and gotten better right away. I've seen them come in and go out and die. I've seen people that hadn't gone as far as I have, and still, they come in and they're not ready yet, and they go back out. So I was lucky that when I actually accepted that I needed the program and needed to get sober, I haven't had a drink since. And But that's not guaranteed, right? We all know that, you know that more than anybody. And it's, it gets hard this time of year. I work 12 days on, 2 days off, and they're 12 to 14-hour days. So it's hard to get programming in my life in the summer, but then in the winter, I'm pretty much have a lot of free time and I'm able to dedicate a lot and have had some sponsees and stuff. But what really sunk in for me, yeah, I wasn't going to go 20 minutes. What really sunk in for me was, and I actually got this from the Joe and Charlie tapes, was like really coming down to an understanding of the allergy, right? Like, I have an allergy. I mean, it's so simple. It's like if I put this in my body, my body and brain react different than a normal person's, period. Right. And then it's like the book says, well, then just stop. It's academic at that point. Don't put it in your body, no problem, no consequences, no issues. But then I have the obsession of the mind that without some sort of recovery program, I am going to, at some point, whether it's life's going good or life's going bad, I'm going to think I'm okay and I'm going to put alcohol in my body and I'm not going to stop. And really, man, just coming to a solid first step of understanding that yes, I'm an alcoholic, and that I don't have to fix everything right now, that I have all the time in my life to work on it, to get through the imperfections of life, but just without drinking. That was the next thing. Like, okay, I have this problem. I've been shown how to do it, but then panic sets in. I'm never going to be able to drink again. I'm going to have to do this shit every day of my life. And that's where the one day at a time comes in. I used to hate AA cliches. Now I love them. And it's just true. Like, I just, I got to look at what's right in front of my face and deal with it. Do what I can today. And that's enough, and it often doesn't feel like enough, but it is. So yeah, that's pretty much the story. I probably could have waxed a little more poetic on program, but I mean, if you're out there, if you're having these issues, I was shown, get your ass in a chair, get a sponsor, and do the steps, period. And any excuses that you can come up with, they're not valid. And they're going to get you drunk. But I believe that if you do those things, you will be sober and you will find some joy in this life. It ain't a bed of roses. Life isn't easy. Life owes me the death of 2 parents still, and I really worry about that. Life owes me some tragedy at this point, and that can be really scary. But I know I don't have to drink through it. And the last thing is like I am the most grateful for that. I just don't have that fear in my life anymore. Because every day I was using and drinking, especially after getting flying again, every day I was using and drinking, I was afraid I was going to get caught. I'm just so grateful to not have to fear being caught for anything anymore. Just another guy living an honest life. So I was going to get into instincts and overdrive, but it's okay. I think that pretty much covers it.